Hello everyone, my name is Skipper and it's my pleasure to bring you the next part in Alliance Redwood's Camp at Home video series. Now today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects to talk about in outdoor education because it involves animals, and that's going to be what is the difference between reptiles and amphibians. In order to help me with this, I've got some friends I would like you to meet. So we're going to go back to the back of our herpetology area, and I'm going to introduce you to some of the creatures in our herpetology collection. So let's take a look up here. The first person I would like you to meet is our lovely friend, Levi. Now, Levi is a bearded dragon, and he likes to hide in here all day. And then down here, we've got another favorite friend of mine. He's hiding right now, so we're gonna go into his enclosure and we're gonna meet Boaz. Boaz is a Pacific gopher snake. You can see him hiding right down there. Little tongue flicker as he's realizing that somebody's found him. Hi Boaz, we'll come back for you in a minute, buddy. And then we're gonna go down to our lower classroom where we keep some of our water animals. I'm going to let you see some more friends that are down here. So down here we've got our red-eared sliders, Rahab and Delilah. They're saying hi to us. We've got some tadpoles. We actually don't quite know what species of frog these are yet. We're waiting for them to grow up and then we'll find out. And then down here we have our rough-skinned newts, Timothy and Titus. You can see the other one back there in the back. Barely poking his head out here, we can see our friend Samson. And let's see if we can get a closer look at Samson here. And he is a Pacific giant salamander. And then all throughout this enclosure, most of them kind of piled up right there in a little frog pile. On top of the log, we've got our Sierran tree frogs. Now, what makes a reptile and what makes an amphibian an amphibian? If you look on page 22 in your journal, there's a handy Venn diagram there that will help us to figure out which characteristics belong to which set of creatures. Go ahead and take a moment. I'd like you to pause the video and fill out that Venn diagram to your best guess. And then in a moment, we're going to look together at your answers and we're going to see how you did and give you some more explanation on what those terms mean. All right? Pause. All right, so you should have your Venn diagram filled out, and now let's take a look at our answers. So as you can see, there are characteristics that belong to reptiles exclusively. There are characteristics that belong to amphibians exclusively. And then there are some shared characteristics. Don't worry if you didn't get them all right. We're going to go ahead and go over them together right now. All right? And what better way to go over them together than to go look at the animals and see these characteristics up close. So let's go take a closer look at some of those friends that I was showing you at the beginning of our lesson. This is Beulah. She's our brand new, beautiful speckled king snake. And I wanted to start with her because she highlights a characteristic of reptiles that is really important, which is their scales. You can see how her scales have this beautiful speckled color. There's blacks, there's like a yellowish white that extends all the way down her body and kind of covers and protects her. So one of the characteristics that reptiles have that amphibians do not is scales. The next characteristic that's important to reptiles is their claws. Claws are defined as a bony tip on the end of their fingers, and you can see here on our leopard gecko friend Gideon that he has some very tiny little claws that are on the tips of his fingers here. Those claws can help him in different environments, scale things, get a little bit better grip as he moves around. Now, a characteristic that all three of our creatures have shared so far, including Josiah, this is Josiah, a western hognose snake, have shared is dry environment, dry skin. Reptiles have very dry skin. They don't require a cool, moist environment in order to thrive. And also, we get to see a really neat thing here in Josiah's enclosure, which is a demonstration of that shedding of skin that we see with reptiles. So there's a small section of his skin that is left over from the last time that he shed in this enclosure. Now this next demonstration is going to require a little bit of movement as I show you two different animals that we have, but this is Esther. She's a corn snake. And one of the next characteristics of reptiles that's important is that their young look like they're adults. So Esther's one of our older snakes. She's a corn snake. And we actually have two younger corn snakes in our collection right now. And you'll notice as I go out here to introduce you to the other ones that our younger corn snakes look just like Esther, only a little bit smaller. And that's because as long as they're alive and as long as they're shedding their skin, reptiles can grow and continue to grow until they die. So let's take a look underneath here. And I will introduce you to Mr. No, who is a younger version of our corn snake Esther. Hi, Mr. No. All right, moving on to our amphibians. The first thing that I want to point out about our amphibians is that unlike our reptiles, they require a cool, moist environment in order to survive. So you'll notice that all of the animals down here in our water room, as it is named, have water in their enclosures, and that's because it's crucial to helping them survive. There's actually only one species of reptile down here. Can you guess which one it is? Now, with my friend Samson here, you're going to notice that his skin is smooth and he doesn't have those scales that our reptile friends have. You'll also notice that it seems to be a little moist and soft. And that's just again indicating that our amphibians have cool, moist skin and need moist environments in order to survive. That's because amphibians take in oxygen and other resources through their skin. That's vital to helping them live. If you look very closely at our rough-skinned newts, you will notice that they have little black tips on their fingers, but those are not claws. Remember, claws are defined as hard, bony structures on the tips of appendages on hands or feet. And so they've got these little tough black spots on the tips of their fingers, but they are not claws. And that's one of the ways that we can tell that these guys are amphibians. Another important characteristic of amphibians is that they lay their eggs in water, while reptiles lay their eggs on land. So we have tadpoles here, and tadpoles are one of the stages of metamorphosis for amphibians. Amphibians go through a process of metamorphosis where their young do not look like their adults. Now, tadpoles are small frogs, small species of frogs, and you can tell this guy right now does not look like a frog at all. That's because he's still going through that process of metamorphosis. And lastly, for the characteristics that all of our creatures have in common, they all are ectothermic, which means they require external sources of heat, like our lamp up here, or up here, in order to help maintain their body temperatures. Unlike us as humans, Reptiles and amphibians cannot regulate their own internal body temperature, and so they require external sources in order to do that. They all have a spine. We can see this really clearly with our turtles. I have a turtle shell that's hiding back in here, and you can see the spinal structure in the back of the shell here. Similarly with our newts and our salamanders, it's difficult to see without actually getting into their body to look at it, but these guys have a spine as well. And believe it or not, amphibians, like reptiles, shed their skin, but it is more often shed in small sections, and they frequently eat it, which is why we don't often see the shed skin remaining in the enclosures. So now that we've covered all of these, I'd like to challenge you all to a game of, is it a reptile or is it an amphibian? I'm going to take you around and I'm going to show you a couple of creatures, and using these characteristics, I'd like you to make a guess as to whether or not the animal that I'm showing you is a reptile or is an amphibian. Meet Lydia, our crested gecko. Now, based on looking at her here, do we think Lydia is a reptile or an amphibian? This is a tough one, but if you guessed reptile, you would be correct. Lydia is a reptile. She has small scales that cover her entire body. She has little bony claws on the tips of her fingers. She has a spine, and she has very dry skin. Thank you, Lydia. This is Eglon, and Eglon is a California toad. Now, looking at Eglon, do you think he's a reptile or an amphibian? If your guess was amphibian, you are correct. Eglon does not have scales, he has cool, moist skin, and he does not have claws on the tips of his fingers, he just has fingers. This is Goliath. Now, looking at Goliath, is he a reptile or an amphibian? If your guess was reptile, you are correct. Goliath has scales that cover his entire body, and he has very dry skin, which are our clearest indications that he is a reptile. Now that's about all I've got time for today, but while you're at home, it may interest you to know that there are a lot of things that you can find in your own backyard. A couple of tips for this. If you see something and you're not sure whether or not you can pick it up, it's best to just leave it be. All animals that you're going to find in your backyard are wild, unlike the ones that we have in our enclosures here. And wild animals can be unpredictable. And so in order to stay safe, it's best to look with your eyes and not with your hands. However, if you go around in your backyard or around your house and you look in cool, moist environments, you may be able to find native amphibians that live near your house, like the ones that we have on our property here at Alliance Redwoods. So, we're going to take a look underneath this log here, which is a place where amphibians might like to live. I'm going to very gently take this log and pull it back so that I can see what's up underneath it. And we're going to find a slender salamander, spending his time looking for food underneath this log here. Now, if you do happen to find creatures like this, it's important to know that you need to be careful in how you put their hiding places back to avoid crushing them. So what we're going to do is we're going to very gently make sure that our slender salamander friend is not underneath our log when we roll it back into place. So I'm going to use a stick. I'm going to very gently just slide him out of the way. Sliding him over here. So that when I take this log and I roll it back into place, my slender salamander friend is safe and sound and can find his own way back underneath the log. I hope you learned something today. My name was Skipper, and we'll see you next time.